Welcome. I'm Cole, music director here at KVRX 91.7 FM, and these are my library picks. To start off, I have Melted by Ty Segall, released in 2010. Ty Segall is one of my favorite artists, but I also have a somewhat pseudo-special relationship to him, given that we grew up in the same town, small town of 20,000, relatively small, in Laguna Beach, California. We grew up in the same neighborhood. His childhood house is exactly 1 block away from my house. I have the address on my phone. And he graduated my high school in 2007, 12 years before I did. I do have his senior picture also on my phone, because I am a stalker. And this album is really reminiscent of his older material, where it's actual garage rock. A lot of people still put that label on him today, but it's really meaningless. But back when he released this, he was an actual garage rocker. When he was living in San Francisco, attending San Francisco State University, and actually working at their radio station. There's a good YouTube video of him playing a set at the closing of their radio station, which unfortunately is a fact of today. But there's just so many great songs on this album. This is the first Ty Segall album I heard back in 2016. I actually had a opportunity to interview Ty Segall, but I had not heard of him at that point and declined to do it because I was just turned 16 and didn't want to drive to LA on my own, and I was scared of people. And now that is one of my biggest regrets, that I never met him. I have met him once before at a tiny club that he graciously played in my hometown, but I wasn't even able to go to that show because it was 21 and up, and I was 15 at the time, so I stood outside the venue door and listened through the wall. But I did meet him for about 10 seconds prior. But my mom was able to talk to him for about 15 minutes in the club, so I was very jealous of that. I saw him 4 times this past summer when he did his LA residency, and I am determined to interview this man one day and just talk about my childhood, because that connection means a lot to me, even though it really is not a real connection. This is Yoko by Beulah, released in 2004. Obviously, it's named after Yoko Ono, and it's almost fitting, especially because it is of the white cover, reminiscent of the Beatles' White Album. And some Beatles fans believe that Yoko Ono played a role in the breaking up of the band. And whether you believe that or not, that's kind of a general consensus, and this was Beulah's breakup album. Not only did the band break up after this album, but 3 of the 6 members got divorces during the recording of this album. And Beulah is an amazing and I think vastly underrated band. They were active from about 1998 to 2004 or 2005 when they broke up. And they're from San Francisco, California. And Yoko is actually not my favorite album by Beulah, but is the only album we have here at KVRX. My favorite album is When Your Heartstrings Break, released in 1999. And that was the one of their 4 albums that was released on the Elephant Six label, which is a label that hosts many bands that I am a huge fan of. And I'm really hoping that one day Beulah might reunite, because I would love to see them. They've got just gorgeous instrumentation, and they use a whole range of instruments and just put it together in such a perfect pop package. This is Teens of Style by Headrest, released in 2015. This album is actually a compilation album of re-recorded material from Headrest's early days all the way through their most recent album at the time that it was released. And this was the first album that Will Toledo released on Matador Records when he signed after graduating from Williams and Mary College in 2014. And I absolutely love Headrest. It's a little cringy, not gonna lie, but the music is just so good. And Again, this is the only album we have in our library, but so many songs on here are just so amazing. He's such a good songwriter, and there's just something about him that the edgy little indie kid in me really speaks to me, you know? And so I highly recommend exploring all of Car Seat Headrest's discography. This is Starlight Walker, the debut album by Silverjuice, released in 1994. Silverjuice at the time was David Berman, Stephen Malkmus, and Bob Nastanovich. Of course, Stephen Malkmus and Bob are very famous for their place in Pavement, which is my favorite band of all time. But Silverjuice is a very close second, very far up there. And Silverjuice really means a lot to me, and especially this album. This is my favorite album by them. There's just some ephemeral quality to David Berman's songwriting that is just I've never heard replicated. He was really one of a kind, and when he passed away this past August, it really affected me, and I still think about it a lot. And his loss was definitely the most impactful loss of a musician that I felt personally. And if you really want to hear honest, direct, and just beautiful songwriting, listen to Silverjuice. And finally, I have the Summer Babe 7-inch by Pavement. This is the yellow label version as opposed to the white version, meaning it's more valuable or whatever. And it's actually marked KTSB when we received it, our old call letters. And the note on the back reads, "Don't steal this, it's the best," which is just the truth. This was the first track off of 1992's Slanted Enchanted, which was actually named after a poem written by David Berman from Silverjuice. Because Stephen Malkmus, Bob Nastanovich, and David Berman all went to the University of Virginia together. Malkmus graduated in 1988, while Bob and David Berman graduated in 1989. They actually all worked together at WTJU, UVA's radio station from 1986 to 1989. But they did not form Silverjuice until 1989. Previously, they were in Ectoslavia together. And Silverjuice actually predates Pavement, even though during the time in the mid-1990s, a lot of fans thought that Silverjuice was actually a Pavement side project, which is so far from the truth. But Pavement, like I said, is my favorite band, and they were really formative in the early years of when I started getting into music. Though they were not the first band to really get me into the music that I love today, they were the ones that made me commit to what I'm in, and they will always be such a special band to me. And I'm so grateful to be able to see them this summer after having broken up in 1999, and I'm looking forward to that immensely. And so if you ever come across this in a record store, do not pass it up, no matter how much it costs, because this can really change who you are. I'm Cole, and these are my library picks. And keep tuning in to 91.7, where you can hear none of the hits all the time.